be honest about it. The players on the team, you're going to say, oh, we shouldn't have drafted him in the first round. He's not giving us that value. Maybe down the line, you could say something about it when he's no longer on the team. But even then, it's a bit of a cheap shot. The public's smart. They know what's going on. They see whether it's a mistake or not. You don't have to say anything. You make the best of the situation. When you pick a draft choice, it's the same as hiring. Doc, you're a school principal. You've hired people in your life, and I'm sure a couple of teachers you've hired haven't weren't quite what you thought they would be. But while they're working in your school, you're not going to say it was a mistake hiring them. You're going to work with them. Okay, so maybe the answer is never, but because everyone sees whether it's a mistake or not. Everyone knows in the public whether it's a mistake or not. Like Zach Wilson with the Jets. If the Jets had a do-over, they wouldn't have drafted him number 2 overall, but he's still on the team and they're working with him. They're never going to say it was a mistake to draft him that high. Same with the
Yeah,
49ers.
I read the question differently. It's at what point do you admit that you made the mistake and move forward? So if I were the Jets, they did. They moved forward. They got Aaron Rodgers. They said Zach Wilson's not the quarterback. If I hired a teacher who wasn't very good at the end of the year, we'd let that teacher know they're not coming back, and we would move forward. So I think that's how I read that is how I read the question. That's what I thought the question was referring to. At what point do you say
publicly?
Oh, I don't think you have to say it publicly. At what point do you say the guy that we drafted isn't the guy, and how can we move forward? And so I would say, I think sometimes teams get so locked into this fact that, well, he was our first round draft pick. We can't admit the mistake quickly. We need to give him as much time. I think as soon as you realize that the guy's not an NFL player, you got to move on.
But just let me say one thing before I'll hear the other guys out. When you draft a player number 1, if he has an atrocious rookie year, he's usually coming back for a second year because teams don't want to admit they made a big blunder on their draft picks. So they keep him on the roster as long as possible.
I listen. I think at the most 3 years, right? If the guy can't break into your first, your first team, whatever draft pick it is, whatever position it is, you got to say something. You can't just you got to admit that you made a mistake. You owe the fans that. You're not just going to sweep it under the rug. I mean, everybody makes mistakes. And there maybe should be some consequences to that mistake. If you're putting look what the San Francisco 49ers did with Trey Lance. They traded away 2 first-round draft picks to get a quarterback that is terrible. I don't want to hear he's hurt. I don't want to hear he's hurt last year and this. And the guy is terrible. He's not an NFL quarterback. So you got all these scouts that are supposed to know what they're doing. They take a shot at somebody that didn't have enough experience to be an NFL quarterback to start. To me, it's at 3 years, you cut bait, you let them go. And this to me is what should have been done in a lot of circumstances over the years where you draft a first round player in the first round and you just blew it. So to me, at least by the 3rd year, if he can't do it, you not only you move on, you say, hey, we made a mistake.
What do you think, Pags?
I think you have to let him go out through the first contract. I mean, whatever you've made your first contract for is what
4 years, Pags. Rookie contracts, 4 years. Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. So you're stuck with them for at least that first 4. After that, usually whatever decision you make on whether you resign him or trade him away is the decision you make. Think about what the Raiders have done over their last few years of first-round picks. I don't think they have a first-round pick on their team for the last 6 years, and it's been that way forever. So it's like they're always either trading it away or something happens where it's didn't work out or one thing or another. So I think that initially you're going to have to wait for at least their first
I
contract.
think you meant the Rams, Pags. They're the ones that traded draft choices more so than the Raiders.
I'm talking about the Raiders. I know who I'm talking about. I had one guy that went to jail. They had
but the Rams
they had
are the
Mac, they
ones
traded
that
away.
never have a
I'm not
number
talking
one.
about them trading away their picks in general. I'm talking about the players that were on the team and then they got traded away, or they're in jail, or they're somewhere else. You know what I mean? It's like, this is what's going on. That's a Raiders thing to do. I'm not talking about the Rams.
Jack's talking about the Rams bags.
The Rams are the ones who trade their top draft choices away more than any other team.
Yeah, but we're not talking about trading one of the top draft choices, Jack.
But he's using the Raiders as an
What-
example. He's
Yeah,
using
all
the
right,
Raiders as-
find out. All right, I want you to look it up right now. Google this right now. There, how many first-round picks do the Raiders have on their team from the last 5 years?
Peg,
Oh,
you-
You tell me that.
I know what you
Zero.
mean.
Zero, because they got rid of them all, or they're in jail.
Pags is-
Listen to what I say. I don't interrupt you.
But when they get out of jail, Pags, they're back with the Raiders.
Are they?
I don't know.
Ladies and gentlemen, this actually is going to lead great to the next question. I mean, it's we're almost having a boxing match here. This is wow. So, I think we're all in agreement that you have to stick with your first round pick for a little while. I think a smart franchise realizes when it's time to cut bait. And if you keep a guy around and he's not helping, I mean, if you have to keep him because of a 4-year contract, then you got to keep him. But if
Well,
you keep trying to force him into a starting role, even when it's proven that he's not a starting player, that's a problem. Then you hurt
you
your
really
your
don't,
team.
Doc. You really don't have to keep him around for 4 years. You can trade him at 3-year point. You don't have to keep him for 4 years.
Well, that's what I would do. I'd get rid of him as
Yeah,
soon
I
as
mean,
I
you don't
realize he's
have
not
to.
going to be
That-
an impact player on my team.
Just because the contract is 4 years doesn't mean you have to keep him. But I think what Pags is saying is for developing, if he would give him the whole contract to be, to see if he can come around. But you don't have to do that. You definitely could trade him away.
I think the Raiders should trade him to the Chargers. That's what I think.
Trade who?
I don't know. Whoever the first round pick is. And isn't that what Jack was saying? They're on the Chargers. Chargers keep getting rid of their guys.
Sometimes it's not viable. If a guy hasn't performed for your team, chances are another team's not going to want him, or they're not going to want to give you really anything of value. So you're better off just keeping the guy you drafted. And even though it might seem like a little bit of a long shot, he'll reach his potential. What do you have to lose in that type of scenario?
Well, let's do this. Let's pretend Rodgers didn't go to the Jets. You guys got Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson. Say even still you got the offensive coordinator Staley, and he's working with Zach Wilson. So Zach Wilson doesn't have a great year. He's an okay year. You start going down the road you did maybe with Sam Darnold. That maybe he could be, maybe he couldn't be, and then you end up keeping him, and nothing comes about it. That's what can happen to a franchise if they don't make a trade for a veteran like an Aaron Rodgers. And as you said, Jeff, before, they should have got rid of Sam Darnold in year 3. They should have just unloaded him, but they kept him around that extra year and pushed the Jets farther back. So, that's what I'm talking about. The Jets are a little bit of a different example because they did something. They went out and they got Aaron Rodgers. A lot of teams can't do that or won't do that.
Well, that's why the Jets have always done so well.
Yes.
The Jets made the smart move here. They realized that their number 1 draft pick, Zach Wilson, isn't going to be an impact quarterback, at least not this coming year, and I don't think ever. And they said, we've got to go in a different direction. They moved away from their number 1 pick, and that's what I'm saying they should do. Teams should always do. Once you realize he's not going to be an impact player, you can't keep going back to the well thinking, well, we'll just throw this year away because this guy's not good. No, you got to move forward. You got to figure out a way.
Well, the Eagles have a backup quarterback now, Marcus Mariota, who was the number 2 overall pick in the draft coming out of college by Tennessee. And they stuck with him for years. And he was so-so, but they kept waiting for him to reach his full potential. He never quite got there. He wasn't bad, but he wasn't good for a number of years. Finally, they moved on. He became a backup for the Raiders, a stopover. And then he went to the Atlanta Falcons to start for them. And before the year was out, he was gone because they they didn't invest a number 2 pick in him, the Falcons. When you don't draft a guy, you don't make that investment in him, it's easy to get rid of him. Now Marcus Mariota's with the Eagles, and they were certain he was going to be the backup quarterback to Jalen Hurts. And he performed terribly the other night. Let's see if the Eagles going to play it out all the way with Marcus Mariota. Are they going to cut their losses and move on from him, or should they move on from him? I don't know.
Well, I'm not sure if they're going to stick around with him or not, because they actually like the number 3 guy as well. So, and he's performing a lot better. I don't know that they're stuck with Marcus Mariota. I mean, let's think about the Jets in the last 10 years. How many first-round quarterbacks did they pick? And obviously the last one's still on the team, but he almost exited himself because of the way that he was talking to the rest of the team. So, he's too busy trying to sleep with his mom's friends.
Oh, come on. None of that stuff on this show. Come on, Pags. I mean.
It made news. It made news.
None of this stuff. I mean, if we want to talk about conduct, let's talk about the Philly fans. I mean, their conduct, their behavior at the game.
It has nothing to do. We're talking about players that actually make the money, not the people that actually pay the salaries. So we're talking about just the quality of person that the team actually picks. So let's talk about all of the Jets quarterbacks that are on other teams, right? Because that's what happens. They find out that quarterback
Geno Smith, Sam Darnold, yeah.
Yeah, so in the last 10 years, they've gotten how many first-round picks, and none of them are still there except who's on there right now.
Chad Pennington was a first-round pick. He was pretty good. Ken O'Brien, he was fairly good. And there was Joe Willie Namath. He was pretty good too.
Well, so you went all the way back to the 60s to find a quarterback that they stayed with. That was good work. Good work by that franchise.
Yeah, the Jets have been a team that's had a lot of trouble for a long time. And that's why, if you're a Jets fan, you have to be excited about the prospect of what Aaron Rodgers could possibly do this year. Finn McMahon.
Listen,
you can't hate on the Jets, Jamie. He loves you, Jamie.
Yeah, I know.
He loves watching your show. He's up 5 o'clock in the morning. It's in Las Vegas.
That's because he's playing Fortnite over there. I know what he's doing.
Finn is the Jets.
All right. This guy knows his stuff. This Finn knows his stuff.
Yeah. That's why he lives out in Vegas.
He's a Philly guy picking the Jets to win the Super Bowl.
He's not a Philly guy. He lives in Vegas.
Well, I mean, he's got some link to Philly, I'm sure.
He has no link to Philly. The only link to Philly is he watches my shows.
Let's see if the Jets can make the playoffs this year before we start talking about the Super Bowl.
Yeah, let's just really go down that. I think we've talked about this briefly a couple times. If the Jets make the wild card, is that a successful season this year? Or do the Jets have to make it to a championship game? Or do the Jets have to make it to the Super Bowl? Real quick answer. How far do the Jets have to go for this year specifically to be considered successful?
Win one playoff game, because everyone is expecting bare minimum to make the playoffs. If they don't make the playoffs, the year is going to be considered a failure. If they make the playoffs, don't win a game, it's basically you cut it down the middle. They're not good, not bad. But if they win one playoff game, it's at least successful. It's not what Jet fans want, but they could say, look, we haven't won a playoff game in a while, so it was big progress, and maybe next year is going to be the year. At least one playoff game.
I disagree now. I thought that before, Jack. They got Delvin Cook. You got Aaron Rodgers. You got a great young defense. Everybody's picking them top 5 to go to the Super Bowl. The Jet fans are thinking they're going to the Super Bowl. I just saw your head coach say 17-0 or it's a terrible season. Slaw came out and said that's the pressure in New York. I don't know, Jack. I think they got to go to the championship this year. If they don't, Jet
They
fans
were
are.
7-10 last year, Max. 7
I
and
know.
10.
I know.
If they
I'm
go
not.
10-7, 11-6, and win one playoff game, that's minimum to call it a success. That's what
I
I'm
don't
saying.
know.
That's at the ending point, but you
I
could,
don't know.
if
Hard
that
not.
happens, no one's going
I
to say
mean,
the year was a failure.
Pags, how much publicity has one team got that hasn't won a playoff game in years? Hard Knocks.
Well,
Aaron
years.
Rodgers. I mean, come on. I mean, this team right now is expected almost to go to the Super Bowl. You see the projections. If they don't go to the championship this year, I think Jet fans are going to be very upset.
I think that's the problem, is that everybody's drinking the Kool-Aid. Truth of the matter is that if they went 10-7 and didn't make the playoffs, I still think that would be somewhat successful, because that's the first time they've had a winning season in God knows how long. So I mean, let's start with that. Let's start with actually winning games for real, rather than let's get to the playoffs and win one playoff game. I mean, who knows if that's really going to occur? So my thought is that they are going to, they got to at least have a winning record, which is something they haven't done in forever. Let's start with that.
Interesting perspectives. All right, we're talking about Philadelphia, and we were fighting, which brings me to the idea of a Philadelphia fighter. And as everyone knows, one of our favorite topics is to dissect the Rocky Balboa movies. In Rocky 3, Rocky fights Clubber Lang. Now, of course, Mickey gets, he has a heart attack before the fight. Rocky's head isn't into it. Rocky gets knocked out. Apollo trains him to fight like Apollo Creed, and Rocky wins the rematch. But they never had a third fight. Why was there never a third fight between Rocky Balboa and Clubber Lang?
I'm going to tell you, Pags, you mentioned about drinking the Kool-Aid. I think Doc, when it came to Rocky's career, was drinking the Kool-Aid. Rocky had all these soft title defenses, and Doc would be supporting that. Even Mickey said they were setups, easy opponents.
No, they weren't setups.
Balboa winning.
They were not setups.
Easy opponents.
Yeah.
Easy opponents.
Rocky asked me, goes, were they setups? Nah, they wasn't setups. They was hand-picked.
But he deliberately ducked Clubber Lang. Ducked Clubber Lang, okay?
That's
Clubber
true.
Lang knocks Rocky out. He took him lightly in the rematch. He hardly trained. And the reason they didn't have a third fight, it was personal with Rocky. It wasn't personal with Clubber Lang. Case in point, when they interviewed Clubber Lang and they asked him, do you hate Balboa? He said, no, I don't hate Balboa. I just pity the fool. So it wasn't personal with Clubber Lang, but it was personal with Rocky. And I think Rocky was at the end anyway, at the line. And that was it. He got lucky. He won, the rematch, because Clubber Lang hardly trained at all for the rematch. He was huffing and puffing after one round. So that's what I think it was. And Rocky only fought the Russian. He didn't really fight anybody. He didn't even have another title fight, really. The one with Ivan Drago, it wasn't a title fight. No title was on the line for that fight.
Correct.
It wasn't sanctioned. And in this fight with Mason Dixon was an exhibition. So he never had a title match after that. So Rocky was basically finished, in that regard. That's why there wasn't a third fight.
Interesting. I think there wasn't a third fight because Rocky took away all of the aura that was around Clubber Lang. Clubber Lang's strength was the fact that he intimidated everybody. What's your prediction for the fight? Prediction? Yes, prediction. Pain. You said I don't hate Balboa, but I pity the fool, and I will destroy any man who tries to take what I got. Right? Like that was Clubber Lang. He was just intimidating. And then in the fight, when Rocky says, "My mother hits harder than that," right? Like he ain't so bad. All the aura around Clubber Lang was gone. No, there was no reason to fight him again.
There should have been a third fight. They split. I mean, if you were a promoter and they split, you would have that third fight. I mean, the money-making capability of that alone would make me want a third fight. And I think Clubber Lang would really trying really hard the third time to fight Rocky. I agree with Jack. I think it was personal. I think Rocky was so popular that people just didn't want. He didn't want to give Clubber Lang another shot at him. I think Rocky was still a little bit intimidated by Clubber Lang. Clubber Lang almost had him in that fight. I mean, if you think about it, Clubber Lang was wearing him down after Rocky was doing all his dance. He was pounding. Clubber Lang wasn't going nowhere. So I think it was personal. I agree with Jack. He's got his statue being put up, and Clubber Lang is ruining his party. He's ruining his parade. He's talking about his wife, and I just think it was totally personal about Rocky and Clubber Lang. So I think Clubber Lang, I feel bad for the guy. I think Clubber Lang deserved another shot. And Rocky still held on to the title. They should have made him fight a mandatory fight or strip him of his belt.
Oh yeah.
Well, they should have at
Definitely.
least had a mandatory fight against Clubber Lang because he was still got to be number one rated. So I mean, to me, it lacked reality there. There should have been a fight that was forced on him by Clubber Lang, and then after he beats Drago, why doesn't Drago fight Clubber Lang? I mean, that should have been a fight that should have been part of the series. So I feel bad for Clubber. I really do.
Pags, you have an opinion?
Not really. So, but I mean, truth of the matter is that there was no money for Clubber afterwards. Clubber like retired because he got beat. He didn't handle defeat very well. So he just faded off into the sunset. You never heard any more about Clubber Lang. He never was the number one contender again. That's what happened. He kind of faded off, and he became B.A. Baracus on the hit show The A-Team, and it was Rocky 2.5, where Rocky became Lincoln Hawk, and he started arm wrestling.
Case in point, why wasn't there a third fight between Anthony Joshua and Andy Ruiz? Andy Ruiz wins by a stoppage in the first fight. Joshua wins the rematch. There hasn't been a third fight because as soon as Andy Ruiz got a little money in his pocket, he's living the high life, totally irresponsible, hardly training. So there hasn't been a third fight. Hasim Rahman knocks out Lennox Lewis. Lewis wins the rematch. They didn't have a third fight. But whatever, because Rahman somehow wasn't living the life of a fighter immediately right after. And kind of was a bit the same way, I guess, with Clubber Lang.
Did Buster Douglas fight Tyson a second time?
No, there's no second fight. Ed Douglas got knocked out by Evander Holyfield, and he was living the high life. I mean, some of these guys stop living like athletes. I mean, they rather sit on their couch and eat all day than train.
Once you get paid all that money, you don't feel like getting hit in the face anymore. I mean, I get it.
Yeah, I get it too. Makes a lot of sense. Here, this might be our most. Before we go to the most controversial topic we've ever had, Finn actually asked a question. What do you guys think about the Sunday Ticket now being on YouTube? So my question to follow that up is, because I don't follow this closely enough, is it something that you have to subscribe to on YouTube, or is it just free YouTube? If it's free, I have no problem with it. If it's also on network TV, if it's something you have to pay for, the Yankees have been doing this, as a lot of teams have. I don't and boxing, we've talked about this. They took the sport away from everyone. You can't watch it. It's on HBO, it's on Showtime, it's on pay-per-view. I don't understand taking a sport away from the fans and expecting them to keep paying more money for it. So if it's a pay thing, I'm against it. That's my opinion. What do you guys think?
I think you get enough football on CBS, NBC, and Fox where you don't have to watch the little extra. We're going to get the games on anyway. But if it ever got to the point where you really have to pay serious money to see a team play, you're right, Doc. It would hurt the sport in the long run. It really would.
I don't think it's $450 a month. It's probably $450. That's a lot.
Or maybe it's $4.50. I'm not sure. Maybe there's a missing.
That's a lot.
Yeah, probably it can't be $450.
And why?
Actually,
and why?
I think it's like $45.
The Yankees last night on Apple TV.
Why
I don't have Apple. I couldn't watch the game at all. So
they did you a favor. Why would you even want to pay to watch something that's free? I don't get it. I can watch every game. I can get analysts on almost every channel out there about football. If I want to watch that, why would I do that? I don't understand that. It's the same thing. It's the same thing with the red. What do they call that? Where they show you Insta highlights, the NFL, whatever the hell
Red
that
Red
is.
zone.
The red zone. I can get that on the regular TV. I can get updated on that all the time. Why would I want to? I don't get it. I really don't get it.
So the reason why would be is that if you happen to be a 49ers fan in Connecticut,
Right.
you don't get many live 49ers games, that would be the reason why you would want to get the NFL ticket.
But Pags,
But that's fair. You want to know
stream
something?
that. You can stream that for free.
You
can stream
can't.
that.
No, you can't.
We
No,
just did
you
that with
can't.
the Panthers. We just did that with the Panthers. The Giants were blocked out here. I just watched it for free.
Yeah,
And-
did you use one of those apps
Yeah, I think so.
that cut off every once in a while because you're not supposed to be doing it?
I didn't cut off. It didn't cut
Well,
off.
that just means you got lucky, but that doesn't mean that that's illegal. That's an illegal streaming app. I use one myself. So it's okay. I mean, it's like I couldn't watch. I was in the middle of a class the other day, and I wanted to watch the Media Little League play against, go up against Texas, and I had to watch it through an app that was illegal, and that app would stop every commercial because I'd have to reset it because it was illegal.
I will say this in defense of the people who are charging, okay? If you live, let's say, in Connecticut, as Pax was saying with you, Mac, and it's not the Jets and the Giants, and you're a big 49er fan, you're not going to get many 49er games. In a case like that, I'm not against them charging for fans to see their specific team in another part of the country. Because if Jack likes the Denver Broncos, let's make believe, that's my team. I want to see all the Bronco games. That's the only way I could see it. There's nothing wrong with charging to pay for that. But to see the local games like the Jets, Giants, there would be a problem if that was taken away.
I think the app I was on, Pags, was NFL Network. That was the app I was on. Am I right? What was I on?
It was blocked out on Sling.
Right, blocked out on Sling, right?
I plugged in our regular antenna.
No, I'm talking about the game before. When I watched the whole game on.
Oh, so no. See, that's a whole different scenario. You
No,
could
no.
plug in an old school antenna and get HDTV. HDTV actually goes across normal everyday airwaves like old school televisions.
Okay, and I watched the first game on Yahoo Sports. That's what it was.
On my iPhone.
So I mean, there are ways to get to those games that are blacked out without paying $45 a month. So anyway, there you go.
All right. I think it's time for our most controversial question ever. This really comes as a result, I think, of the U.S. women's soccer team losing in the World Cup and the comments that have been made by players on that team, and they didn't stand for the national anthem and things like this. So the question is, should a player be thrown off a team representing the USA or whatever other country is, I guess, in world competition the first time the player demonstrates against his or her country? So the idea is you play for Team USA and then you demonstrate against Team USA. Should you still be on the USA team? What do you think?
I think they should be counseled beforehand, the players. The law should be laid down to the coaches, the players. You win a medal, and you don't conduct yourself in a proper way by just, standing there at attention or whatever. You turn your back, you make some type of demonstration. Team gets stripped of the medals. You win as a team, you lose as a team. There has to be an understanding of what players have a history doing that. Now, you're representing a country. You're not representing a professional thing. You're not representing the Yankees, Mets, Giants, or Jets. You're representing the United States of America. You're representing another country. The other countries outside of the United States won't put up with that. They won't put up with that you're protesting against their country during the international event. You agree to represent the country You have to conduct yourself in a certain way. I don't mean you have to stand there and hold your hand over your heart and sing the national anthem. I don't mean that. But you can't do anything that's in the form of a protest, putting down the country that you're representing, because it's a privilege to represent the country. And you can't have it any other way.
Two problems with what Jack said. First of all, we're not talking about a medal. We're just talking about you're at a match and you're not standing for the national anthem or for whatever anthem there is.
Okay.
So don't count the medal. But why are you going to punish the whole team for what 3 or 4 or 5 people do? I don't agree with that. I think, listen, you know the rules. I mean, if you're going overseas, they tell you everything. They tell you what shots you should get, where to stay away from. You know, I think it's common sense that if you're representing the United States or you're representing Brazil or you're representing China, you don't do that on a world stage. You know, I mean, if it's professional, if it's professional basketball, I don't even know anybody in professional sports that has done that I'm aware of. Maybe there is. I don't know. I've never seen the world team in basketball, demonstrate against the United States when they played against other teams. I don't remember that. Maybe they did. I don't remember. So why is this different? Why is it different for them? Is it because they're females? Is it because they feel that this person is bigger cause than what they're doing? You know, I don't know. But I think soon as you do that, you pack your bags and you're gone. See you later. We don't need you. And that's I ain't gonna punish the whole team.
So I will say this. There was so much. It seems very ridiculous to say this. There was a lot of joy in Mudville when KC struck out. You know what I mean? When Megan Rapinoe missed that penalty kick, I tell you, I heard more about how people were happy that they did not win. It was one of the first times I've ever heard and like Americans talking about how they were happy that they didn't have to deal with whatever thing that they were going to try to do. And the fact that she gave like a smirk after she missed the kick, that lost the game for them, that, was like, everybody was just like, good. This woman is gone now because she retired. It was her last game. And we don't ever have to deal with her ever again. And I'm sure that the powers that be with women's soccer took note of that in a lot of ways. You're not going to find another Megan Rapinoe come back on this soccer team. They're just not going to do it. Yeah. And I feel like that soccer in the U.S., women's soccer in the U.S. took a big hit because of the acts of a few. So actually, I'm more on Jack's side, which is rare, for anything. That yes, if there is a couple of people who decide that they want to make it a stage for a platform to be able to say some of the things that they feel, that the whole team should get penalized for that. Because yes, you are a team, and you win as a team, you lose as a team, you accept the medals as a team, and you're there because the country that you are representing is paying you to be there. You want to go ahead and do whatever you feel like against that. I feel that that's absolutely wrong. And like I said, there were tons of people that were happy that U.S. didn't win.
Interesting. Doc, before you go, let me ask you a question, and let me ask you guys this too. Do you think it's possible? I mean, it's a kick on goal, right? And she's done it 100 million times, and she missed terribly. Is it possible, because she was retiring, it's her last time to do this, that she did that on purpose?
I don't think so. I can't imagine. I mean, that would be in the idea of sport. And I think the allure of sport is the idea that we go out there and we give our best no matter what. Like that's the mindset of an athlete. You might win, you might lose, you might have to, you might get injured or whatever, right? Like, but you're going to give everything you have. That would not be a good look at all if somebody in any sporting event decided not to give their best. I mean,
she missed it by a mile. It's not like she just missed it. She kicked it
but
clear.
she wasn't the
over
only one who missed. They kept missing, right?
The penalty kick that she had, which she's done a million times, she missed it by a mile. And she kicked it clear over the thing. It wasn't even like she kicked it towards the goal where the guy had made a play on it or hit the bar. She kicked it way over the goal. And I'm saying this is her last chance to say, heck with you. I'm out of here. The heck with the United States. Is it possible that a person would
I can't.
It's only possible if she hated her teammates by some chance. There's no real evidence of that. At the beginning of the tournament, she stood up with the other athletes for the anthem, and then she was quoted as saying, I'll never respect this national anthem. She said something negative, but her physical, she didn't turn her back up, protest in any way.
She sent back women's sports in general. Bap, crying that, they need to get paid the same way that the men get paid, blah, blah, blah. The way that they were paying the women, they were getting paid more. When they found that out, they wanted to go back.
Well, no,
we're going to get paid more this way than this way. She's been a mess. She never knows what the hell she's talking about. She doesn't want to be on this team. I'm glad she's gone off into the sunset. You and your purple hair, bye. You don't want to be here. Go live somewhere else. You don't want to respect me.
You're getting too emotional about this. But
this is an emotional topic. This is an emotional topic.
Yeah, but to answer the question with Mac, no. She's a great player. She's not going to miss on purpose.
That's fixing a game. I mean, that's the most egregious thing in sport. If someone were to do that, lose on purpose.
She'd want to win the World Cup and then at the end maybe conduct a protest or something where all the attention would be on her, not during a preliminary round at the end. I mean, I understand what you're saying, Mac. It entered my mind briefly, but no, I couldn't see it tanking it.
No, I think she would have wanted to make that kick so that she could have made a bigger, had a bigger platform to say something. You know what I mean? That's what I would think. So I don't think she missed on purpose. I think
want to win too. As a competitor, I'm sure she wanted to win. Let's forget any of the politics. And I'm sure she didn't want it. Her teammates. You do want to win. It's just an instinctive thing.
I mean, and after watching one of the best soccer players ever, Messi, he had an open goal and missed.
Yeah,
it was the whole net was open against the Union and he missed. So it's not like it's
but
unrealistic.
Pags, he's running down the field, whatever. She's standing there in a spot which she's done hundreds of times. And I'm not saying she did this.
It's
saying
not automatic.
It's not automatic. Protest. What is a bigger protest than saying, heck with this?
Mac, I could say the Yankees threw the 2001 World Series Mariano on the bunt to throw to second base. He's made that throw his whole life. And then he pulled the field off the bag. You could always have, but it's Mariano. No one in their right mind would think he deliberately did that. But these things happen in sports. You make the most routine plays all the time. In some way, somehow, you botch up something that should be easy for you.
I mean, think of Buckner. You think he tried to miss that ball? The Mets wound up winning the World Series.
Yeah, I just think that's the idea of sport, and the sport. I'm not counting professional wrestling from the 80s and that kind of thing, because that was scripted or whatever. But the sport that gets the most criticism for people lying down on purpose, Jack would know this, would be boxing, right? There's all did Sonny Liston really lose to Muhammad Ali in that fight, or was he paid to take a dive? And when the question becomes people are diving on purpose or losing on purpose, that then strikes to the very integrity of the sport. And if there's a player, I mean, your whole reputation forever would be ruined if they knew that you missed or you lost or you threw a bad pitch or you took a dive on purpose. I mean, you go 100% against the creed of the athlete, no?
If she ever said she did it on purpose, even her best friends wouldn't forgive her for that. I mean, that's unforgivable that if you tank it and your team loses, it's one thing you have a political view, people can disagree with you, but if you deliberately lose a game, throw a game, I mean, it's awful. I mean, in boxing, the only time conclusively we knew a fighter threw a fight, even though we know there were other instances, was Jake LaMotta, the Raging Bull. He did it to get a title shot. So he played along, he stood on his feet, he allowed himself to get hit for the fight to get stopped, and he got a title shot 2 years later because he helped the boys, with the gambling and all. But and we're always suspicious, in sports. It's kind of amazing. Even like a quarterback overthrows a receiver, and some people are going to wonder, how can you miss that throw? It's so simple.
Well, is that what Marcus Mariota was doing? He was throwing the game on purpose so that he could win a bet on this exhibition game?
Well, it's an exhibition game. Who's betting on that except Mac?
Some
but I
people are. Some people are.
And I
They
think
are.
Bags brings up a big point, and this is why sports has always tried to disassociate itself with gambling. Because again, once you question the integrity of the event, then the whole sport, the whole event loses its integrity, right? Once you doubt if it's legit, then it's not really legit anymore. And then that really goes against the whole reason why we watch sports. We want to see who's the best. Maybe not the best ever, maybe not even the best team that year, but who's the best at that moment. That's what we're looking to see. And if it's not legitimate, there's really no point in watching it. Then it's just scripted. Then we just watch Rocky 3.
That wasn't real.
I think the Rocky movies are real, but I think Mickey Mouse is real when I go to Disney World. So, all right. So we probably have time for one more question. We'll go with the next one on the list. Let's say you have a player that can win you a championship, but the player's at odds with the general manager. And then the player refuses to play if the GM is there. What do you do? Whose side?
I've never heard of this scenario before.
Yeah, I think it's
It's going on in Philadelphia right now with James
I know
Harden.
that's what I'm talking about. So,
all right. I haven't heard it. So give us a little background, Pat.
All right. Well, if you've ever heard of the guy named James Harden, he has an all-out beef with Daryl Morey because it was said that Daryl Morey promised him a new contract, blah, 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 blah. Hey, you promised to play your best every game too there, James, and you were too busy out playing with the girls rather than coming in and practicing and doing your thing right. So, and you're part of the reason why the team wasn't good enough to get past the Celtics. That being said, this is what happens when the inmates run the asylum. You get things like this. So I'm not a big Daryl Morey fan either, but I am more for the general manager than I am for the player here in this regard. You signed a contract. You have to honor the contract. In every other sport, they make you honor it. You can sit out, but then you don't have to get paid. And that's kind of what it is. So now he's going to come into camp. He says, I'm not going to play for any team that he's the GM for. But he's a liar and whatever. Listen, you're a fraud. You're a fraud. You're old. You're soft anymore. And you've made all this money and you've done all those things. And you're just not anywhere near the player that you're supposed to be anymore. So you can cry all you want. I hope that this all plays out the way I expect it to. I don't expect that the Sixers are going to do really well this year anyways, because they just don't have the pieces in place. Although everybody says they're still a championship caliber team, I just don't see it. And I can't wait for the next collective bargaining agreement because the Sixers have been the centerpiece of what this collective bargaining agreement is going to be about. It's going to be about players that don't feel like playing, or if they're making up. You could say that Ben Simmons is a head case now because of all the stuff that's been going on with him, and he's probably more likely than not that he is a head case. But now you got Harden doing the same thing. You've got Dame Lillard who says, "I only want to play for Miami, and you can't trade. You can either trade me to Miami or I ain't playing." Wah wah wah. You know what I mean? It's like I'm tired of the way these players are doing it. I hope that the NBA really puts their foot down and says, we're going to do things this way now. If you don't like it, we're just, we'll have a holdout. We won't have a season this year. And then nobody gets paid. And then you watch all these players start crying because they need that money.
Let me say, Pax, within your narrow scope of thinking, you're just pointing to the James Harden thing. But what happens if you have a player of the greatest character? Let's say I'm going to give you a case in point of Patrick Mahomes. Let's say Jalen Hurts. Let's talk Philly. Jalen Hurts, someone of the highest character. Let's say a few years from now, okay, Jalen Hurts has established himself as a great, great quarterback, close to Patrick Mahomes' level, that type of player. And the new GM comes in, and the new GM is giving him a hard time, and he's thinking, this isn't worth it. I have millions and millions in the bank. I don't want to play here anymore if I'm going to have to be with this GM who's constantly harassing me. If you're the owner, whose side are you going to take? I'm on the side of a Jalen Hurts because I know his character. I know the type of person he is, okay? And some of these people put in leadership positions, GMs, coaches, so on. Sometimes they were terrible fit in that job. Sometimes you do have to back the player. In your case, you're 100% correct. I don't back James Harden for anything. I agree with what you said in that regard. But it depends on the instance. If it's a player of great moral character who hasn't had problems anywhere he's gone, and all of a sudden you have this loud, boisterous GM coming in, shaking things up, acting in a crazy, irrational way, I'm on the player's side then.
I knew when I threw that out that Jack would take the player's side. I knew it for the most part. Jack gives you the most, how do I want to say it? The most outreaching terms, right? The GM is a loudmouth. He's just got there. And the player is the highest of character. He's never done anything wrong. I knew Jack would go with the extremes there. All right, so let's talk about a couple players that were great. Michael Jordan, greatest NBA player of all time, arguably. He has a problem with his GM. He's not going to play for the Chicago Bulls.
He did have a problem with his GM, Jerry Krause. He did.
So if he says, I'm not playing if Jerry Krause is there, what do you do if you're the owner?
He didn't go that far. Michael Jordan harassed him.
He does. Say he does.
If you're the owner, you mean to tell me you're going to trade Michael Jordan unless if you feel it could go either way between the player and GM. But let's say the GM is just being a complete dope.
No. Just
you would back him over Michael Jordan.
They don't get along. I mean, they just don't get along. They don't. Michael Jordan wants nothing to do with Jerry Krause at all. What are you going to do? Are you going to give in to Michael Jordan into a player over your GM who built the team?
They did give in to Michael Jordan. The GM wanted to fire Phil Jackson. He hated him. Jerry Krause hated Phil Jackson, but Michael Jordan loved Phil Jackson. So they kept Phil Jackson because they didn't want to antagonize Michael Jordan.
I'm saying Michael Jordan gives you, the owner, an ultimatum. Either Jerry Krause is gone or I am gone. What are you doing, Jack?
It depends. Is the GM an honorable guy? I got to know about the GM's character.
Oh my Lord! How do we even know this? If whether he's honorable or not? Like,
you're working with him. You should have an idea. You should have an idea. I mean, could the GM do more to foster a good relationship? And if your answer is no, the GM's be doing everything within reason to be a good guy and to work things out, then you stick with the GM. Look at happened with the Packers with Aaron Rodgers. He didn't get along with the GM.
Tom Brady says, I go where Belichick goes. What would you do as the owner?
I would stick with the coach in that case, with knowing the New England Patriot history, but It happens, but look what happened with the Jacksonville Jaguars with Urban Meyer. Urban Meyer was a madman. He was the one that went. So if
Yeah,
you
but
start playing,
that had nothing to do with anybody saying one thing or another. You know what I mean? Truth of the matter is that the person who's making the demands, if I'm an owner of any franchise, and I got a player who's making demands on me, that player's the one that is going. I'm
you're
not.
talking big now, Pax, but if it was Joel Embiid instead of James Harden, you'd be singing a different tune, maybe.
Maybe. See, again, you think that you know how I think.
You want
One
to
thing that
win.
we've
You
learned
wanna
about these
win,
shows
Pax.
is
You
that
just
you
talk
have no
about
clue
winning.
on how I think. So actually, if Joel Embiid started to make those types of statements, I would actually go and try to figure out, all right, where am I going to get my best deal from? I don't care. Listen, if you don't want to play here, I don't want you here. I want Philadelphia guys because Philadelphia guys are what makes this team and makes this city tick. It's not about. So you're right. You think that I'd be all on Joel Embiid's side? That's not the case. That's
Guys,
not
when
the case.
we're talking GM, we could talk manager same way. A case in point will be Doc can relate to this. When Bobby Valentine went to manage the Boston Red Sox, they all rebelled against them. So whose side were you going to take? Oh, Bobby Valentine's our manager. We're taking his side. But meanwhile, the players on the Red Sox couldn't take him. That's why he didn't last.
But that's management's decision to eventually change the manager because the team isn't performing. I don't think a sports club can function well if you have the players saying, I'm not going to play because so-and-so is my boss. Jack, the same way. I don't know how many different superintendents or phys ed supervisors or principals you worked for, but if you had marched to the Board of Ed and said, you know what, I can't work for Principal X, they would have told you, okay, resign. Yes, and I'm sure you were a great teacher. They're not going to say, well, yeah, all right, you're a great gym teacher, phys ed teacher. We really love you. You're a great coach. We're gonna fire the principal. No, that's the boss. If you're a player and you don't like playing for the boss, well, you still got to play for the boss. Did the Yankees love playing for Steinbrenner all the time? Did the A's love playing for Finley all the time? No. You're the player, their management. They are the ones who make the rules that you have to follow. If you don't like it, you can do things like you can talk to them and say, I didn't appreciate this. I want to file a grievance or anything like that. But ultimately, your job is to play. You can't demand I'm not going to play if Brian Cashman's the GM or whatever. And like Pack said, I don't know about the players on the Philadelphia basketball team, but if Aaron Judge starts saying like I'm not going to play because of X, Y, and Z, well then let's find a way to trade you. And I don't think Aaron Judge would do that, but right, like you can't just start saying the players can dictate how the organization is going to run. I don't think that works at all.
And like I said, this next collective bargaining agreement is going to change the world in the NBA. I said it 2 years ago when we were going through this Ben Simmons situation. And truth of the matter is that all they did was substitute one problem for another. That's what happened. That's what happened. They had a kid who didn't want to play, and they got a guy who doesn't want to play. That's all this is. Wow, cry babies. Listen, go play, go own your own strip club. You got enough money, Harden. You can fade away into the sunset. Nobody cares about your beard. You know what I mean?
Let me play devil's advocate here. James Harden is getting paid $35 million this year. Okay, and guys, don't figure $35 million. I'll sell stuff at the concession stands during the game for that type of money. But $35 million, but he opted in to play for the Sixers this year based on the thought that the Sixers were going to trade him. Now, if he had an agreement in place with the Sixers, that they were going to trade him this season, that he opted in and you're going to get traded, and then Daryl Morey changed his mind and said, no, we're not going to trade it. We don't like what we're getting back. Then Harden was deceived if he was led to believe by the Sixers that he definitely was going to be traded. Doesn't that change the equation somewhat?
I don't think necessarily. I don't think a sports franchise GM should ever say, I'm going to definitely trade you. I think what you could say is, look, if you re-sign with us and things aren't going well and I can get a good deal, I might be able to move you. But I would never say I'm going to absolutely trade you, because then you have no negotiating power with any other team, right?
Yeah, that only makes sense, Doc. I mean, what GM's going to say? Yeah, sign in, and we'll trade you to whatever team you want, or that would never happen.
That's why Damian Lillard's not out of Portland. I mean, this is I only want to go play for Miami, and you got to make a trade with them.
Yeah.
Well, so they're going to
yeah.
give you a bag of donuts. So I mean, that's what brought it all out, because let's face it, Damian Lillard, as much of an upstanding guy he might be, isn't the brightest, which is the reason why he stays quiet all the time, because when he starts to talk, it doesn't make sense. And he's the one that brought light to some of this.
No, Damian Lillard's never said anything that's been.
No, that's right, because he remains quiet. He remains quiet most of the time.
But he's smart to remain quiet. It's the opposite.
He's the one that started all this. He's the one that said, "I will only take it to Miami."
It was his agent who represents him, so he's responsible at the end of the day for what his agent
and you're right.
says.
It may be that I'm placing the onus on Damian Lillard, and it shouldn't be placed there. And so I could be wrong, because I don't know him well enough. You know what I mean? And I don't know about the player well enough. But I do know that it was him, and it came from his camp. That's the reason why this is all occurring.
And that, my dear friends, brings us, after an action-packed hour of fun and frivolity and great debate, to the end of this Saturday's debate show. Thank you, everyone, for watching. We'll have 4 or 5 or 10 more great questions next week. Pags, you got to make sure you come back, because you add a sense of life and enjoyment and good debating to the show. All right, everyone, have a happy Saturday.